Oh, hey there. Yep. Today's one of those days. Oh.
You ever just realize how we develop relationships with literal pixels on the screen? I mean, think about it. Anime girls are just pixels with a personality slapped onto them, and suddenly they're enough to kill real women. If you don't know what a waifu is, why are you here? But the most accepted definition of a waifu is that they are fictional characters that one might share a bond with. This bond may just be character favorization or something similar to a crush.
Of course, I had my fair share of waifus in the past, though they were mostly just crushes when I was young. My first waifu was Shauna from Shotgun no Shauna, and no, it isn't weird, I was 11 at the time. She was the pedophile!
But with the existence of waifus comes many questions like why do we have them, where did they come from, are they weird, why is my hand bleeding? Now I can answer most of these questions, but you might be wondering how I became an expert on the subject of waifus. Well, I actually wrote a research essay on this subject for my college psychology course.
I wrote an essay on waifus for a school assignment. It got 99, to this day I still don't know how I lost 1 point in content.
Want to use this in your own school essay for some ungodly reason? Fuck it, here's the source in both MLA and the better format. Also fuck you, Chicago. There's a wide range of classifications for waifus. To easily visualize this, I've created a graph representing the tiering system of waifus. There are 4 tiers of waifus. With the higher tier comes the higher power. The type of waifu that most people have is the best girl class. This class consists of seasonal waifus that people like for about a month, then trash when new season hits. These characters may never actually be given the title of waifu by belt holder, but are good enough characters for someone to call them their best girl to show. Some examples of these characters are Nezuko from Demon Slayer or Reptalia from Shield Hero.
So just r/animes.
The next class is the actual best girl class, which consists of one's favorite female character overall. This character may be an actual waifu or simply a good character. These characters can be given the title of an actual waifu, with some generally agreed on examples being Tosaka Rin and Makise Kurusu. The tier after this is the waifu tier. These are characters that share the same personality traits that you would want to find in a significant other. These are mostly crushes and don't mean anything serious. How do I know this? Well, on that fateful 9/11, I actually proved this on a survey I held on r/anime. I didn't want to ask this on r/waifuism because I don't want to die. In this survey, I asked people what they looked for in a partner and what they liked about their waifu. Almost all of the responses shared the same answers for both of the questions. Of course, there's a small sample size, so take the results how you please. I'm more impressed that people completed a forum on their waifu on 9/11, but hey, I got to cite myself in my own essay, so that's pretty neat. Also here, citations for that too. The waifu tier can kinda merge with the previous tier, but there can be differences. There are some female characters you may like as a character, but when waifu them, and vice versa. However, there's a good chance that your best girl is also your waifu. I mean, Makima's hot and all, but would you really make her a waifu?
Yes.
But then, we landed in the final tier of waifus, being... What is this final tier? It's a tier for genuine romantic interest in the character. It's not anything simple like a crush, but actual infatuation. They may even purchase items such as shirts, figurines, or dakimakuras, body pillows, for their waifu. For example, remember that guy that married Hatsune Miku? Yeah, that happened. The man, Akihiko Kondo, somehow held an actual marriage ceremony that costed about 2 million yen or $18,000.
Most people who claim to have a waifu are around tiers 2 to 3 of my waifu scale. However, there's a lot of people who are willing to make it to the final tier. But how does it even get this far? Well, I feel like I know a couple of ways that this phenomenon could occur. This video will mostly focus on how it makes it to the final tier.
In my essay, I go a bit more in depth into each of my topics, so if you want to learn more on this, you can go ahead and read that. Let's talk about mental illnesses, specifically the disorder erotomania. It's very easy to push the existence of waifus to just someone being weird or having a mental illness, but it's much deeper than something like that. Erotomania is the delusion of love between a person and their love interest, who almost always never knows the existence of this person. To put it bluntly, it's yandere but more, though I don't like using an anime trope to define an actual mental illness. Like imagine being in therapy and your therapist calls you a tsundere. Someone famous for having erotomania is John Hinckley Jr., whose love interest is Jodie Foster, an actor and taxi driver who played as a... This love eventually brought out the desire to assassinate President Ronald Reagan as an attempt to mimic the main character of Taxi Driver, who also wanted to assassinate the president. You could compare waifuism to erotomania as both share the definition of having desire for love for someone who doesn't even know them, but that's about it. Most people who have a waifu, even to the highest tier, know that their waifu at the end of the day is fictional, and most likely will not go to the point of harm to obtain something they know doesn't exist. I mean, most of us won't attempt to assassinate a presidential candidate for our waifu.
Maybe.
Well, what's the next possibility? After World War II, Japan's economy sorta kinda fucking died. But because of that, they developed idols which soon evolved into hell. Yes, Japanese idols, or just J-pop idols, gained a lot of popularity around the 1990s during Japan's last decade, when the economy stagnated and therefore struggled after the previous economic bubble. Idols are marketed towards otakus. In fact, the word otaku used to be defined as people who are way into idol culture, purchasing merchandise and researching their favorite idol groups. This is how the term became an insult until anime and J-pop's popularity grew mainstream. Idols are marketed in many ways to relate to otaku culture. These methods essentially manufacture the idol's life to make sure that they can be as relatable as possible. One well-known method of idol marketing is restricting relationships. If an idol were to get into a relationship, they can jeopardize or even cause the destruction of their group. Another way of how idols are crafted to become the perfect beings is simply killing them off when they aren't. Each idol has a best by date. This is the age in which the idol must graduate or leave their group, usually around ages 26-28, as they become too old to be an idol.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's cool, but how does this fit into anime girls?
Well, anime waifus and idols are both things that were manufactured to be perfect. Their lives are scripted in such a way to make themselves seem relatable, but just out of reach.
So, Japan indirectly created waifus through J-pop idols? I don't know.
While I do think that idol culture definitely relates to waifus, and maybe even began the idea of waifus for some people, I don't think that's quite it. After all, idol girls are still real people. But there's one more idea I'd like to discuss about the possibility of how waifus are created. Meet Toby, a man in his 20s who suffered from depression and because of that, met his waifu Yui Hirasawa, who helped his mental health a lot. Yui has been sort of a dual-edged blade for him. While she has helped him with his depression, at the same time, the fact that he knew that she didn't exist hurt him. During his interview with Dr. K, he described his relationship as something similar to religion, where even though he knew his wife wasn't real, Yui gave him genuine help and kept him going throughout life.
And this is where I'm really about to offend people, but I think sometimes the way that you talk about Yui is actually the way that I hear people find religion. Oftentimes people find religion in dark times. And there are a lot of things that just hearing you talk triggered memories in my mind of hearing people talk about religion. So being in a dark time and having this sort of pure in one way kind of relationship where they pray to God and they believe in God and they idealize God, and God never really talks back, but not in the traditional way, not in the way that a normal human being does. But there is some kind of response, right? There's a sense of enveloping, complete, pure, and perfect love that you feel. And that's sometimes when I talk to people who are religious, they kind of talk about that.
This could be exactly why waifuism exists at all. Waifus are essentially an idea. They are simply an amalgamation of what one desires in a significant other, with the design being the vessel for their existence. Even if they know they aren't real, the help that they have given them is real. Let's go back to the beginning with Kondo, that guy that married Miku. He had actually met Miku during his 2-year hikikomori phase, which he had entered due to the constant bullying from women during his childhood and adulthood. Whether or not Miku has helped him for better or worse, these cases do indeed show that waifus come from one social problems. These problems that they have faced in their world cause them to seek out some sort of protection and help. And for these people, it was waifus.
So, what really created waifuism and waifus as a whole? Well, there isn't really one main cause for it.
Many factors of the world can create a waifu to deter waifuism for a person. Whatever someone has experienced in their life, whether it be mental illness or some sort of traumatic experience, can be a factor for the creation of waifuism. I would also definitely not assume that anyone with a waifu, even to the tier of waifuism, has some sort of mental disorder either. Looking at the DSM-5's criteria for abnormality, what I think of people with waifus don't match all the criteria. While I won't deny the possibility of mental disorders being a cause for waifus, see Horimiya, I also wouldn't assume that it is one.
After all, as stated in the beginning, waifus can mean so many different things for other people and affect people differently. They're created in so many different ways, and they definitely shouldn't be considered anything bad. But now you might be thinking, oh, you're such an expert on waifus, and who is the best waifu, oh mighty one? Well, it's Ren.